At Songguk, concubine's palace. The court Kubin tells His Majesty how can he act so boldly like this when people are watching, but he only smirks and responds it is because she is too lovely. She drops her gaze, asking what should she do for loveliness to be a sin. Must this lady forever live on as a sinner? His Majesty remarks how pitiful for her to be so lovely. The onlookers smile awkwardly. What are they even listening to? He then pulls her by the hand, telling her to come here. She shall accompany him tonight. She asks must she wait until tonight. He pulls her into his arms. Seeing his darling concubine is not very patient, she ends up beaming at him, asking if he truly cherishes this Yesu. Once again he takes her into his arms, exclaiming she should is not just adorable, she's elegant and graceful. He then leans in closer, whispering in her ear that he can barely hold in his laughter. Now she's pissed, demanding if he thinks she's being funny. He lifts her up, calling her his poor little lamb, and adds since she has accepted the payment, she must act accordingly, right? She forces a smile, but there's a glint in her eye. No one can know that their relationship is a false image that they have created. The emperor and she are merely employer and employee. Their bizarre relationship began a month ago. A man arrived at a hidden assassin village in Songguk, looking for the Grim Reaper. It all began when a client came to the village with a job that had 100,000 gold coin commissions fee attached to it. Someone had appeared beside her asking if she was the Grim Reaper. She had instantly known he was a client, and judging from his appearance, he seemed like a rich young master. She asked him if he came here to find the Grim Reaper. She didn't know which family's naive young master he was, but he came to the right place. She introduced herself as the Grim Reaper, the village's best assassin. He repeated naive young master and admitted that was the first time he had been called that. Felt kinda refreshing to him. She gave him a deadpan look. Was he stupid? That was supposed to be an insult. But then he demanded if she truly was the Grim Reaper. Then she needed to show him her face right now. She said what, show her face and not please show the humble her beautiful face. He replied yes, her face, and added this job wasn't a job that she could complete without revealing her face. She shot back, this job require beauty. He casually stated beauty wasn't always required, but they could say it was something similar. She crossed her arms, asking if he knew what kind of work she did right. Asking her to show her face when he won't even specify the reason. What kind of job was it for it to have such bizarre requirements? He asked if that wasn't allowed. She sighed and stated it depended on the job. Showing or hiding her face depended on the request. He said that was a bit troublesome. Would he come here himself if it were a simple job? She told him to look here, as he already knew she was someone who would always fulfill the client's request. It seemed that he was worried that his information may leak. Rest assured, his information will be completely secure. But he retorted she could perfectly protect his information. A mere assassin. She fired back, what? Was it funny to see someone who made a living by killing people pretend to be tight-lipped? He realized she was angry and apologized if she offended her, but she told him not to worry about it. Away from her main job, she was a very compassionate and warm person. In fact, she would even go as far as to say burning furiously. She trailed off when he burst into laughter. He gave up and told her to listen, calling her a compassionate and warm assassin. Could she also kill an emperor? She said no, absolutely not. Never. She won't. Was he insane? He challenged why. Did she lack the skill? But she questioned instead if he knew how much of a headache they could cause she got involved with them. Killing him wasn't the issue here, but the aftermath. She didn't accept commissions for the emperors, kings, or religious leaders. She let him know if the work was related to that, then the exit was over there. But he only grinned, saying, "Is that so?" That was a relief. He was just kidding and threw something at her. She questioned what was it. He replied, a down payment. It was a check. It was her first time receiving the down payment as a check. She started reading the figure and a jolt ran through her. It was a payment of 50,000 gold. She asked him, didn't he say this was the down payment? What was the actual amount? He replied if it was an emperor, king, or religious leader, then as long as she refused, he would take back the commission. It was a down payment of 50,000 gold. Altogether it was a commission of 100,000 gold. Even with just 50,000 gold, it was enough for her to live freely for 3 generations. But the down payment was only 50,000 gold. If it was such a huge sum of money, then after she completed the mission she could get so much and she could save them. She realized there was no reason to hesitate and told him all right, taking off her mask. If she could save them, if she could atone for them, anything would be fine. She looked at him, her blonde hair trailing down her back, and said Yesu the Reaper will accept his request. His request is that she, the Grim Reaper, enters the Emperor's harem as a concubine. At first she assumes she has to kill a concubine. That is easy too, but then it dawns on her not killing but entering as a concubine. In other words, he wants her to be his contract concubine from now on. She retorts, a contract concubine? Even dogs would laugh at that. She stares him dead in the eye and tells him to quit joking, asking an assassin to be a concubine. Is he crazy? But he replies he's not joking, he's being serious. She lets out a laugh. He's being serious. That is hilarious. She wonders what is his identity. Judging from his appearance, he looks normal. Is he one of Songguk's high officials? She finds herself contemplating if she should find out if he is being honest or not, and tells him if he wants a contracted concubine, wouldn't it be better to go somewhere else, like a brothel or something? He replies, impossible, it would be troublesome if it is not her. She raises her eyebrow and demands why. Has the precious emperor of Songguk gotten bored of his concubines? And now he wants a taste of a pretty assassin. A smirk plays on his lips and he remarks how funny. He lets her know the task she needs to complete as a concubine won't be easy. She has to be strong. That is why he came to see her, since she is the one rumored to be the strongest. If he's completely honest, the emperor has zero interest in eating up an assassin. He laughs at her, making her flustered. Why is he laughing? Who said she would even do it? She realizes he needs someone strong to enter as a concubine, but wonders why and asks him to specify. He says his request is simple. Infiltrate as the emperor's concubine, expose those who are undercover agents. The emperor would pretend to cherish her, and that will create the idea of the possibility of her becoming empress. Naturally, all the agents will be lured into this trap. Among those who fall for their use, there will definitely be an agent from one of the three great powers who wishes for the downfall of Songguk. Her job is to find evidence against them and report it to him. She thinks over his words and then suggests he could just hire people to go undercover. She thinks if the agent is in the palace, it might be easier to hire a concubine to go undercover instead of someone random. Watching her closely, he says it seems she gets it now. She replies roughly. The only thing she understands completely how black is his heart now. He adds there's another important condition. The type of concubine he wants isn't just an ordinary one. She asks. If not an ordinary one, then one kind of concubine he wants. He ends up smiling. Later he tells her he will stop here, and when the sun comes up he will send a guide. If she has any other questions she can ask the guide instead. Shiver runs through her body. Why did she accept without knowing anything? A 50,000 gold down payment isn't even that special. She pulls on her hair like a mad woman, wondering just why. Why must she do this? The next day, the guide introduces himself as Myungyeon. After she enters the palace, he will act as her biological older brother. She stares at him flatly and repeats, biological brother. She doesn't think they look anything alike. He has a solution for that. She's going to take after their mother and he's going to take after their father. She shoots back, isn't that too unfair to their mother? They both stare at each other. Then she says it is nothing, thinking sure, whatever, he will probably do something on his end. Hidden informs her she will enter the palace next week and there will be a ceremony at the palace to welcome her, where all of Seongguk's administrators will be in attendance. He told them she is under his recommendation and wants her to make sure the story matches. She replies she gets it. He turns to her, asking if she really gets it. She snaps she said she got it. Afterwards, she wore the outfit and accessories he brought and they left the assassin village. And so 1 week later, at the day of the ceremony, her presence is informed in the hall. His Majesty instructs her to be let in. She lifts her face looking at the throne, thinking that guy is the emperor. The emperor remarks just as he heard she's quite the pretty younger sister. She decides to take a look at the face of the mighty emperor who let an assassin in as a concubine. But then she freezes. It is that punk, the one who came to the village of assassins, Ahan, her client and the emperor. And the guide Myungyeon is there too, standing beside the emperor. She forces a smile on her face while cursing these people. He said he was undercover, so she thought he was a mob working in management at most, but the emperor himself made a request. She smiles at both of them, thinking so the two have been in on this together. But then Myungyeon shoots a glare her way, as if telling her why is she standing there blankly. Hurry up and act. She thinks so this is her fake honorable elder brother. She thinks now that she's already here, it would be a waste to just run away, and she's already accepted a down payment too. She decides since she is here anyway, she will complete it perfectly with confidence. Now that she thinks about it, the type of concubine he wants isn't just any ordinary one. To put it simply, he needed an impact and wanted a super stupid concubine. All the officials watch in absolute shock as she suddenly exclaims my, just as she heard from honorable elder brother. The emperor is so dashing. His Majesty's courageous and valiant appearance. She has become momentarily dazed. She looks at him with lovesick eyes and states she'll run to him. He burst into laughter. And that was how she was informed of her new, painstaking life as a concubine. Day 1 as a contract concubine complete. Since she entered the palace as an undercover assassin under the guise of a concubine, it has been exactly 1 month. The emperor visits her every 2 or 3 days, where she will receive information and share a meal together. And naturally, they even sleep in her bed together before he finally returns to his palace the next morning, and the whole process repeats again. He says this is how they can spread the rumor that they sleep together. She guesses it is gossip that needs to be spread. He smiles at her, telling her to call her if she needs any help. His Majesty remarks looks like she's having a good time as she gradually climbs the ranks to becoming the favorite concubine, but Yesua's undivided attention is on her food, he tells her. Then slowly people will start approaching her. Yesu, who has only been playing and eating for the past month, thinks she can finally start getting to work. He then teases the small fry is going to start panicking soon. She rises to her feet, asking if he's telling her she's just the bait for them. Is he saying that is her only job? He replies of course. The people he's actually trying to get rid of won't reveal themselves so easily. The more hidden they are, the more difficult it is to lure them out. Her face falls as she replies, seems like all the officials of Songguk have become heavy baggage. She asks, hasn't it been already more than a month since she entered the palace? Do they really need to be this careful in approaching just a measly concubine? He replies it seems she doesn't understand very well. But then he adds it makes sense since she's just an assassin who's only concerned about getting killed or killing. Out of nowhere, she pulls a devilish look and says killing the emperor isn't that hard if he knows. The emperor's shadow and his secretary listen from hiding, completely thrown off that she just said that. As she calmly sips her tea, trying to suppress her anger, he quips since she is so mad, why doesn't she just come down and fight him? He pours the tea and says in front of everyone else, she may act dumb, yet when she's alone with him, she shows all kinds of interesting expressions. She thinks that he just called this alone time when she clearly knows there are other people around. What about those two on the rooftop? He then teases her, where did her nice servant from this morning go? The morning events appear in her mind where her maid was trying her best to make her even more beautiful, despite her insistence that she looked completely fine. Angry, she snaps that she ate her morning servant for breakfast. Her head is still aching from the amount of pulling she did with her hair. He burst into laughter. She thinks the emperor laughs way too much. She then tells him to continue explaining what he was saying earlier, pointing out she is just a measly concubine. So why are they taking so much caution in approaching her? He states the current 2 most influential people are Horan and Suyun, then he would use them as an example. She also tells him the servants have been saying that the emperor doesn't care about what happens within the harem, so how does he know about their influence? He replies he's not interested about the petty fights concubines get into, but concubines are still related to the inner palace politics. So there's no way he wouldn't know. It seems she doesn't understand because it hasn't been that long since she has entered the palace. She realizes he's aware of everything, but he's pretending he doesn't know. He tells her Horan and Suyun have their own supporting factions. Think about it, each faction will try to make a concubine into the empress, which in turn will give those concubines power and authority. She thinks, but what if the equilibrium is broken? Then concubine Horan becomes the empress. Would the new empress, with her stronger authority, simply do nothing about the other concubines? Would she sit back and do nothing to the other concubines who wronged her prior to her becoming the empress? She thinks of course she wouldn't let it go. Besides, because Horan is a clever person, she would do anything to ensure that everyone's influence is immobilized. But then she looks at him and says he's not just going to sit still and watch that unfold, right? He replies that is right, they must nip these flowers in the bud before anything happens. If a flower's alluring yet poisonous, they have to remove it before it affects the best of the garden. She shuts her eyes and tells him girls are not flowers. He admits, of course, girls are not flowers. However, the person he wants by his side is the girl who will become a flower. She bitterly muses as she thought, this emperor is a bit unpleasant as opposed to his subordinates. Fabricating such a plant to swindle everyone is a bit too much. But then he smiles at her, saying it would have been great if he could do everything himself, but he realistically cannot be involved in all matters both important and trivial that concern the empire. The power that the empress has is strong. In any case, the presence of an empress would have influence on the power balance between the government officials. This, in turn, would also affect him. This is why the government officials create factions amongst themselves. She finally understands it and adds, so in order to not be eaten alive within the palace, one must create political alliances to survive. Then the higher up the government officials are, the most difficult it would be for them to choose an appropriate concubine to ally themselves with. He replies if that head of hers wasn't just swimming with assassination plots, she would have been great. Before leaving, he lets her know he will send some silk and ornaments imported from this country to her and instructs her to groom herself as extravagantly and as beautifully as possible and then come to his office around lunchtime. She says it is time to start leisurely making the government officials want to go their eyes out. The next day, she runs down the hallway, her maid chasing after her and yelling that she can't go that way. Before entering the palace, Myung-yeon had given her a map saying it was better to get a good grasp of the palace grounds beforehand. She finally finds his office and pushes the door open. Rushing inside, all the officials are already gathered there, staring at her. His Majesty erupts into laughter. She bitterly thinks how dare he ask her to do something so stupid. And now he's laughing. She lunges straight at him and jumps into his arms. One of the officials demands what is going on here. His Majesty pretends to be furious and snaps at him to lower his voice. This instant he is going to surprise his Yesu. The officials look completely dumbfounded. He then asks her what did she do today. She replies for lunch she had some steamed buns. After that she couldn't stop thinking about him. He questions why did she think of him when she saw steamed buns. She replies it is because His Majesty is so similar to the steamed buns, he is so white soft and has a sweet fragrance. He looks at her with a smile and questions if she came running to find him just because of that. She counters by asking if he doesn't wish to see her, but he exclaims that her cheeks have turned rosy pink from running all the way here. Now, she looks like a chubby peach and he wants to bite her right then and there. He adds that he can't eat lunch. The officials stand frozen, as if they've just seen a ghost, while she quickly objects, saying that's a big no if he bites her. It will hurt. She quickly shuts him down, warning that biting her would hurt. The officials, meanwhile, look 1 second away from vomiting. He then instructs his men to bring her dear Yesu some snacks. Munian also stands there, looking troubled. They cannot believe that a measly concubine enters without any warning and an emperor who just adores her non-stop. He whispers to her now everyone knows that his favor towards her cannot be overlooked. She fires back but his taste in women will now be judged by everyone. He murmurs he doesn't mind and leans in to take a bite straight from her fingers. But then he notices she's gone quiet and softly calls her name. She was looking outside the window and turns back to him. He asks if she likes this place. She replies it is just very different. At his confusion, she explains because this room is a place for meetings. He tells her to consider this as an honor. That she does. Now that she sees a Han, she understands why the servants have been saying their emperor so joyfully. It truly is rare for someone to be this beautiful and elegant. She then looks up at him and questions what will he do from now on, but he casually says it is the beauty of fishing. So they can bait other traders into their fish tank and then they can simply free those who are useless. He smirks saying the people that must be devoured will show up one day. Her lips part as she stares at him and then remarks look at that disgusting expression of his. She wonders how is this emperor known to be kind. If they saw the face he just made, all those favorable impressions of him would disappear. She is starting to feel bad for the people who will bite her. The bait. Back at her residence, Mei runs a comb through her hair and tells her her hair has become much softer than when she first entered the palace. Yesu replies that it's all thanks to her, then admits she's curious about something. She says it's about His Majesty specifically. She wants to know what part of him suggests he's a wise king. Taken off guard, Mei stammers their Majesty. Yesu thinks yes your Majesty. She pauses to think, but nothing comes to mind. She's completely blank. She finally admits she doesn't know. She just thought that because everyone called him a wise king then he must be one. She thinks a farce. She imagines him lounging on his throne, ordering his men to spread a rumor across this whole country that he's a wise king. She snaps out of her thoughts when the maid asks her why so suddenly and presents a bright smile, explaining if it is about His Majesty. She wants to know more. Mei's face lights up, eyes wide with interest as she remarks that she must truly like His Majesty. Though she cringes inside, she flashes a wide-eyed, innocent look and says, naturally, she likes His Majesty so much. Now that she thinks about it, she recalls it as something that stemmed from the prisoners. It seems that His Majesty treats the prisoners quite kindly, so there are a lot of them who are somewhat appeased. Though because it is a wandering rumor, she doesn't completely trust it. Long after Mei is gone, Yesu thinks over her words. A wandering rumor. As she is getting ready, she thinks she is roughly familiar with the construction of the palace from before she entered, so it should be fine. She thinks she's sure that the prison where the prisoners are held is somewhere near the storage. She can go and check for herself to see if what Mei said is true. She watches from her spot in the tree, hidden among the leaves, noting the 2 guards stationed at the entrance. She picks up a small rock and hurls it, just enough to draw their attention. As they glance toward the sound, she slips down and hides in the corner. It's so easy, she almost wants to tell Han to train his men better. Without wasting a moment, she steps inside the prison. She wonders what the prisoner related to the emperor's given name looks like. She has no clue what this guy looks like, but it doesn't seem to be any of these guys. They are all too calm. The scent of blood is getting thicker the further in she goes. She wonders if this is where they torture the prisoners. She contemplates going further. It is getting harder to breathe with this thickening tension. Suddenly, a sound rumbles through the silence, snapping her to attention. It isn't a shout or a scream, it's more like a low, throaty growl. She steps forward towards the source of the voice, but it is so dark so she cannot see much. But then she spots him, looking down at something with a smirk. She studies the figure intently, doubting for a moment if it's really him. She wonders what he is doing over there. Just then, a guard screams, calling out for her. She ducks into hiding without hesitation. Later, as she returns, she thinks to herself as if those guys could ever catch her like that. Moments later, her maid rushes in to inform her that the emperor has come to visit. Her eyes widen, and she quickly slips under the sheets, noting that she's still fully dressed but deciding it's better to just lie down for now. The door opens. He steps into the room, his gaze settling on her in silence. She wonders if he's noticed anything. Her body tenses and then she flinches when he speaks, his voice certain as he says he knows she is not asleep. He asks is there such a thing as someone who sleeps without moving for 30 minutes? And warns if she doesn't get up he will pull off her blankets. Would she be okay with that? She snaps her eyes open and sits up, thinking he is so sharp. He smiles and asks her how much did she see. She feigns innocence and asks what he is talking about. He replies that thing just now. He thought he ordered her to catch the spies, not to poke around in his private business. She thinks accompanying his prisoners in the dungeon is part of his private business and not a government affair. She finds it very suspicious. Averting her gaze, she blurts out she didn't really see much. She just wandered around and wanted to see what was underground since she heard an odd noise. But it was too dark and she could only see him standing here. He asks if that is all. She admits she wanted to see more but then she trails off, noticing the sudden change in his expressions. She gulps, wondering what is with his expression all of a sudden. Is he doubting her? He cups her cheek and lifts her face up. She blurts out that's really all she saw. His thumb hovers over her lips, making her confused. Finally he smiles, saying it seems like she really didn't see anything and then leaves. She remains rooted to her spot, thinking, what the hell was that? Now she's even more curious about what was he doing in the underground prison. But then, she reminds herself, it is not like she wants to go around digging up secrets of a client's private business. Myung-eon tells her she needs to memorize the information in the books, since there are some things she will be required to know. She retorts if His Majesty has let stay an interest in tormenting his prisoners, then she should care less. She continues that of course she feels a bit awkward about it, but it is not to the extent that she wouldn't be able to hide her discomfort. He mumbles what the hell is she talking about? She pats his shoulder and says not to worry, she already knows everything. He is always troubled like this. He casually dusts off his shoulder where her hand had landed and tells her in any case he's going to leave the books here and wants her to make sure she reads them all. She wonders, did he really have to brush his shoulders off like that? The door shuts after he leaves. She watches it thinking does he really not know or is pretending not to? With nothing better to do, she turns to the stack of books and picks one, Rules of Standard Etiquette. Later she reads them thinking she too can become a court lady with this book. But no matter how much he reads, there's nothing exciting about this book. She starts reading it out aloud. It says uniforms of different sectors vary in color in the country of Songguk. They can be recognized by learning what they represent. The investigation departments are identified by black uniforms, the intelligence department by white. She then says brother just had to bring her books that are just as boring as he is. But a sudden noise snaps her attention upward. She instantly looks up, suspicion creeping in. Did he assign someone to keep an eye on her? If so, he's really sloppy about it. Then another thought strikes, what if it's a spy? Someone sent to watch her or worse, to get rid of her. She shuts her eyes for a moment, trying to get a sense of his surroundings. That's when she realizes he's right. Above her, her thoughts race. What should she do? Should she sneak up and surprise him from behind? Or should she wait and see what he does next? A thrill runs through her. She thinks with excitement, this is what she is actually good at. Not that fake flirting with a Han. But then she hears a loud crash and wonders if he just fell. The man sits up with a groan, clutching his head as he lets out a pained cry. She watches from the window and says who would come to see her at such a late hour. She thinks after hearing him fall so loudly, it would be strange if she didn't say anything. He startles and half turns, making her wonder if it is okay for him to show his face. Shouldn't he be trying to run away as quick as possible after seeing her instead of sitting there all dazed? She remarks it is such a hot day, isn't it? While thinking, is he like the noob of newbie or what? He finally snaps out of it and bolts. She watches him go and mutters, yes, yes, Run along now. About time. She then thinks Ahan was right when he said the small fries would appear fast. That kid cannot even be called a small fry. He's more like a bird baby. But no matter how small and cute the baby bird is, she cannot let the prey escape from the spider's web. She pops something into her mouth and blows into the air. Tomorrow, if she follows this scent, she will be able to find those who dare to send such a poor spy after her. The next day, she informs Munian that a spy had appeared. His expression shifts instantly, worry flickering across his face. But then he turns serious, asking if she did anything to the spy or worse, if she killed him or something. She gives him a deadpan look. Is he serious? In this situation, wouldn't one usually worry about the lady first? She asks what he's talking about. Of course she did something. With that, she pulls out a small bottle from her pocket. He eyes it warily, guessing it's poison, and she smirks, claiming she followed the proper course, buried the remains and assures him there's nothing to worry about, casually adding that they'll never find the body. He stares at her, horrified, while she offers him a perfectly even smile. He starts to say she really is something else but stops himself, instead asking where in the world she even found a poison like that. But before he can finish, she bursts into laughter, telling him to look at his face. Only then does he sigh in relief, realizing she didn't actually go through with it. Finally, she tells him she let him run after placing a tracking aroma. She bets he will be meeting his boss while being drenched in this aroma right about now. Confused, he questions how does this liquid work or if it's powder. She replies it is a very fine powder. No matter what they do, it will stay on for 3 days. Also, it is very potent, so this scent will still linger in the places that it passes by, so it is easy to track regardless of whatever it's on, which is why it is called a tracking aroma. He sniffs it and says it doesn't smell like anything though. She says of course it doesn't, he needs to be trained to smell it. As long as he isn't an expert, he won't even know it is on him. It's not an item that would interest regular people anyways. At the provincial prosecutor's office, the chief is mid-conversation when he spots him and calls out, telling him to stop right there. The chief's tone is firm as he demands to know who his supervisor is. A girl steps forward and says it is Taewon, the iron weapon who was in charge of concubine Yesu. He thinks isn't she the one the government officials have been closely watching. Taewon apologizes for being impudent and asks if there is a problem. The chief asks him if he went out on a mission yesterday. He replies yes, he was staking out on top of the lady's residence last night. He wonders if the chief already discovered that. He fell from the roof. They said to be specifically careful with the chief. He recalls his senior telling him of all those in the investigation department he has to be really careful of Chief Hahi, the Iron Mountain. He warned him that if he caught him making a mistake, he would make him disappear. The chief fixes him with a look and asks him if he noticed anything strange while on his mission. He thinks to himself, no, but he did get caught. He ends up blurting out he slipped on the roof and fell, surprising the lady, which caused him to get caught by her. His expression changes in an instant and he mutters he got caught. He replies he had a mask on, but the chief cuts him off, saying he's going to cut his paycheck. He drops to his knees but then calls out after him, saying that now that he thinks about it, something did seem strange. If he remembers correctly, the lady wasn't surprised when she saw him. She greeted him with a very bright smile. Back in her mansion, she tells Mei-hee she's going to sleep now since she has a headache and not to enter her room tonight. After she leaves, Yesu checks through the window and waits until she's gone. She then pulls out the box under the bed. It is time to follow the baby bird. Perched on the roof, she sniffs the air, only to realize the scent is splitting, coming from 2 different directions. The left trail leads to the lake and the right trail heads towards the inner palace. How strange that there would be 2 trails, but it is so obvious. That one leads to a trap. She thinks how fun. She sees the birdie at the end of one trail, which means that the one who set up the trap should be waiting inside that deserted palace. Though it is possible that both trails are traps. But it doesn't matter to her since there is no way she is going back like this. She wonders where should she go, the lake or the deserted palace. Later she enters a hall, thinking as she thought, the less obvious trap would be more exciting. Looking around, she wonders if they used this as a banquet hall in the past. She comes to a stop where the aroma is the strongest and hides behind the wall. 6 to 7 people are surrounding her. Looks like she picked the right trap to spring into. Just then multiple knives lunge at her, but she manages to dodge them all with swift, practiced movements. She quickly notices something odd: none of the attacks are lethal. A slow clap follows, and a voice remarks, outstanding. It's the chief. She frowns, puzzled. What's with him? He's not even wearing a mask. He glares at her and demands to know which country she's loyal to. The accusation makes it clear he thinks she's a spy from another country, but something doesn't add up. The exposed face, the black uniform, the question about her allegiance. Even earlier, his attacks weren't meant to kill, only to block her movement. The pieces click into place. He isn't a spy. He's part of the investigation department. She remembers people who wear black uniforms are those who hold a government post in the investigation department. He says he should have known she wouldn't answer his question. She curses under her breath, wondering if she just wasted her time. But then he comes at her with his sword. His sword is dripping with blood. She barely dodges, the blade grazing her hand. She is now on the roof, clutching her bleeding hand. If she'd been a second late, she would have been killed. She thought that silver-haired guy was just some regular officer. She was wrong. He's strong. He tells her to get down. She bitterly thinks, what the hell, if there was someone this skilled, then why did they send someone who rolls around on the roof? She didn't expect them to be part of the investigation department. And it's not like she can kill him. The situation's bad. She needs to run. On her way, she realizes the sword was laced with paralysis poison. If it was just a regular poison, then she would have already had a tolerance for it. But it had to be paralysis poison. She has to hurry and make it back to the residence no matter what. She makes the jump, crashes through the broken wall and falls into her room. Someone rushes toward her, asking if she's okay. For a second, she thinks it's Hareen, which is impossible. The next day His Majesty is having a meeting with his officials. One of them informs him Aguk has been showing signs of hostility to its neighboring countries. He remarks this isn't the first time either. This occurs annually. As if they have nothing better to do. Giziak, a high-ranking official supporting concubine Seo Yun, says if Aguk is the strongest spear, then their Songguk is the mightiest shield, and requests His Majesty not to concern himself with this. They wouldn't dare defy the three great nations. But Sunghing, a high-ranking official supporting concubine Horan, argues with him, asking how can he guarantee that it wouldn't happen. He's implying that their country isn't one of the three great nations. It is true they have shown these signs every single year. Even so, how can he be sure they won't turn against them? They start arguing amongst themselves, making His Majesty drag a hand down his face in frustration. But then His Majesty points out they do seem to be showing desire to start a war following the subjugation of their Hojak. However, it's the wish of the two generals, not that of the royal family. Since ancient times, Aguk has always refrained from such openly aggressive behavior. He instructs Giziak to gather information from the merchants who travel between Aguk and Songguk and Sunghang, and the Ministry of Foreign Officials will ascertain whether Aguk is truly preparing for war. Suinheng admits it is true that generals in Ahagak are known for their aggressive behavior, while Giziak also claims they probably get drunk on their bloodlust after killing so many people. They both turn to His Majesty, bowing their heads in silence. Without a word, His Majesty steps out, visibly exhausted. His eyes drift across the palace garden until they land on a small flower swaying in the breeze. It reminds him of Yesu. A soft smile pulls at his lips, but it fades quickly as he notices the servants watching. A dish is brought to him, prepared on his special order, and he takes it with him to Yesua's room. But outside her door, the maid informs him that she had a headache and turned in earlier than usual. He blinks in surprise. A headache? He never imagined her feeling pain at all. It is as if she had never shed a single drop of blood, even when stabbed. Still, something urges him to check. He calls out softly, asking if she's asleep, then steps inside. The bed is empty. He lifts the blanket. Nothing. Elsewhere, Yesu is bleeding, her vision blurring. She presses forward, whispering to herself to hold on. Just a little longer. Almost there. Back in the room, His Majesty sits, still waiting. She jumps through the broken wall and collapses to the floor. He rushes to her side, panic overtaking him as he calls her name. But to her hazy eyes, he doesn't look like the Emperor, he looks like Hareen. A memory stirs Hareen lifting her, twirling her around, both of them laughing. Suddenly, her injured hand reaches up and rests against his cheek. She murmurs Hareen. His heart skips a beat. She hears low male voices whispering. One of them mutters that she'd be really tasty. Another laughs, saying human children are always the best. The feeling of fear and despair when one is all alone in the world. It was precisely on that day that she realized she had no one to rely on. And the shocking truth was frustrating because nothing would change. Even if she was scared of shedding tears. She hides. Trembling, eyes shut, pleading for someone to come. The creatures above her begin arguing, fighting over who gets to claim her. But then someone said, what were they talking about? This was a rare human. Slowly, she lifts her eyes, fear and hope twisting together inside her. One of the boys smirks, stepping forward. He says he is taking her. He will protect her. That was the first time she met Hareen. He had said it so clearly. Until she grew up, he would protect her because she was going to be his bride. That day, she learned that there was a fine line between them. She stirs suddenly, rubbing her eyes as the brightness stings her vision. She jerks upright, confused. What happened? Then a voice cuts through the fog. Is she pretending to be an assassin? It's His Majesty, seated in a chair right in front of her. But she doesn't answer right away. Instead, she pulls out the knife she'd been hiding. She asks him if it was him that put things in order. He responds so she noticed. He didn't think she would notice since she pulled out her dagger the minute she woke up. He then says, instead of putting things in order, isn't it appropriate to say that he treated her? She climbs off the bed and slowly approaches the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her skin looks great this morning. Is it because she got a good night's sleep due to the paralysis poison? Ahan's eyes stay on her, but his thoughts wander too when she called him Horan. He then simply shuts the book and calls her name, asking if she was careless last night because she thought she was the best assassin. Her eyes go wide, but she manages to compose herself and asks how can he say that. He replies she came back last night with drugs in her system and couldn't stay conscious. He believes even a 10-year-old could easily kill her if she is like that. She ends up smirking and saying what a frightening thing to say. If 10 years old were needed to kill people, then it would be the end of the world. She further says if this is a country like that, then the country's king won't be benevolent or wise. Though she doesn't think he's one after seeing him at the prison like that. He grumbles she always needs to have the last word. She smiles, thinking why does she have to lose against him? He flinches at her next words. She asks why didn't he just change her clothes for her? He asks, do assassins change a woman's clothing while she's sleeping? She responds she's not sure about that but they would be thankful to die peacefully in their sleep. He says in any case, a noble wouldn't do such a thing to a woman who is under the effects of a paralysis poison. She stares at him for a beat and mutters why is he pretending to act all innocent? It is as if he has no interest in a woman's body. He points a finger at her and blurts out it is because she doesn't know men. They want to see a different type of body every time. She shoots back what is he talking about? She knows everything about men. He pauses, asking everything, his eyes wide. She replies whether it's a guy or girl, they are the same when they die. He questions how can she say that so easily? Is this what she was doing? But then she places her dagger down and begins unwrapping her bandage. He reaches for her, saying he can redress her wounds but she tells him it's fine she can do it herself. He clenches his jaw in annoyance. Miss Assassin, the Emperor himself is offering to treat her wounds. She replies that is why she rejected the offer. She wasn't going to say anything since he helped her, but now she tells him to take a look at her hand. Is this a wound that is dressed or a wrapped present? It reeks of someone who has never nursed a patient before. She turns to him and asks, if His Majesty received this kind of treatment, would he still want that person to help him again? She says it'll be better and prettier if she does it herself. He opens his mouth to say something but ends up biting his tongue. He turns away, muttering as he leaves she is not cute or charming at all. Not pretty. Back in the Emperor's palace, he grumbles to himself she is not a girl at all. The Empress's chief secretary asks who is he talking about. Yesu he replies flatly. The secretary asks if she caused some trouble. He snaps she didn't even flinch after showing up out of nowhere with a cut on her palm. The secretary reasons that's probably happened before. She was undercover. He slams his fist on the table. He knows that and he is not worried because of the damn injury. She rejected her offer to treat her wounds again even after he was the one who did it the first time. And she wasn't even thankful. He falls silent for a moment, then mutters, forget it. The secretary watches him quietly, thinking since when have he felt responsible for an assassin? That day, Mei brushes her hair and brings her flowers. While reading, a thought settles in. Now that she really thinks about it, she forgot to tell Ahan about the silver fox from the investigation department that she met that night. She clutches her temple and thinks, is she really becoming an idiot after acting like one? Things will become a lot more complicated if that official reports the incident first. She gets to her feet knowing he wouldn't visit tonight, so she guesses she will have to go and see him herself. He should be in his office at this time. On her way, she comes across the chief and freezes in her steps. She wonders why did she have to run into him here. She shouldn't get caught since she used a mask and made sure not to speak. Yesterday, she even hid her injured hand. She decides to avoid his gaze. Maybe he'll just walk past. But then he calls out to her. She quickly turns to him, slipping into her dumb act, eyes sparkly and smile bright. Does he know who she is? She asks, feigning innocence. He's a little surprised by her sparkly behavior, but then he finally says, how could he not recognize her? She is the first concubine to run through the palace. He looks down at her. She curses him in her mind. He is just bluntly putting her down, isn't he? As if she would be fazed by something like that. She blinks at him with her wide, big eyes and asks is that so? He is startled. She then exclaims she is so happy she was able to make a great impression in the history of the imperial palace. His expression twists, as if questioning her sanity. She silently laughs. Was he really not expecting this? While he visibly fights the urge to gag, she then asks him who is he. He replies he is Hahi, the Iron Mountain from the investigation department, just as she thought he is from that department. She thinks, why the hell did he have to confuse her by sending out amateurs who fall off roofs? And then she thinks over his title. If he is an Iron Mountain, then that means he is in a high position. She quickly slithers away, and with a sigh, he runs a hand down his face. She really is a beautiful woman. He supposes the rumors were true, she's just as dumb as they say. Still, he thinks, it can't be easy being that idiotic. His friend beside him remarks that it's not stupidity, more like ignorance. He scoffs, saying he doesn't care. The matter of the concubine isn't important and he questions where His Majesty is. Shouldn't he be in his office at this hour? 15 minutes later, His Majesty is beaming at Yesu, while Hahi watches quietly from the corner. Yesu rushes up to him, wondering why that man is even here. Ahan hugs her and calls her his precious Yesu, asking what's wrong. She looks up at him and says that if he doesn't have to stay with these people, can he come and play with her? She ran all the way here just to see him, and now her feet hurt. But before he can answer, Hahi steps forward, stating that there's an urgent matter he must report. Yesu cuts in, insisting that she also has something really important to tell His Majesty. She knows he's going to tell him about their meeting last night, isn't he? Not that he knows it was her. Suppressing his anger, he asks the concubine has a report. They clearly heard she asked His Majesty to play with him just now. But she ignores him and tells His Majesty truth be told. She saw something really strange. His Majesty falls into a brief daze, snapping out of it when she calls to him. When he asks what the strange thing was that she saw, she replies that she couldn't decide whether to wear the ruby he gave her before in her hair or on her clothes. But before she could decide, a masked man fell from her roof. He asks something like that happened. She says that's right, but she is a kind person, so she opened her window and asked if he was okay, but the moment he saw her, he ran away. Then, making a sad face, she asks him if she's really hideous enough that a person would run away just from seeing her face. She knows His Majesty should have already heard about this, but since he is smart, he should have realized why she is mentioning that here now in front of the investigation department. He gently takes her hand and tells her that is impossible. He probably ran away because he was embarrassed after seeing a beautiful flower like her. He ran like an idiot after he got caught trying to sneak in with a weak heart. She turns to Hahi and asks what does he think? Isn't that also an important report? He believes now His Majesty will stay with her and kick him out, but to her shock Ahan tells her he still has things to discuss with Hahi, so she may leave now. Their agreement was to act as though they were completely into each other, but if one of them veers away from the act then the other party will feel extremely embarrassed. She never thought the king would do that first. His Majesty is the one who proposed the act, so he's the one who should feel sorry, but how dare he pull that in front of the silver fox? She stomps down the hallway, looking like she's one blink away from tears. The image of his satisfied expression flashes through her mind. He was smirking. Her anger only deepens. She's never letting this go. Meanwhile, Hahi's friend watches her from the corner, smiling.